Good morning. Thank you for having me. It is a privilege to be here, and I'm thrilled to be in person with you. I'm excited and honored to talk about my survivorship journey, and I realize that my story is just one of millions. Each of us with our own unique experience, but some common aspects that tie us together. The commonalities that we share, despite our unique diagnoses or stage of survivorship, is this notion of perseverance and hope, but also of daily struggles, again, regardless of where we are in survivorship. I stand here today on the shoulders of the women in my family. My grandmother, on my father's side, she died when she was 54 years old. My aunt, my tia Josie, she passed away at 44 from ovarian cancer. And my first cousin, Sonia, she was diagnosed at 34, just 9 years before I was diagnosed. And every single female cousin on my father's side has tested positive for the BRCA mutation. As a young girl, I have very few memories of my grandma and my aunt outside of cancer, despite spending every afternoon with my grandma. I do remember the novellas. There were many novellas. My grandma and my aunt went through treatment in the 80s, an era of radical mastectomies, toxic chemotherapy treatments, high rates of secondary cancers. My grandma initially diagnosed with breast cancer and shortly thereafter received a diagnosis of leukemia, and tremendous stigma that engulfed not only their diagnosis, but the entire family. In my naive 8-year-old mindset, their story, our family story, defined the cancer experience to me. To my 8-year-old self, I believed every family went through this. This was my normal. When you're old, you get cancer and you die. Fast forward 20 years, and it's 2007. I was 27 years old and married my high school sweetheart. We were living the best life we could. Having graduated from the ranks of surviving on 19-cent tacos and 29-cent bean and cheese burritos from Taco Bell, we were finally able to go into a restaurant that offered silverware. Our careers were just taking off. My husband, a high school teacher and a varsity baseball coach, and me as an attorney, having just left private practice to go don the white hat as a deputy district attorney. We were proud homeowners of a quaint little home in the Central Valley in California, where it sat at the end of a cul-de-sac and had the perfect porch with 2 rocking chairs. Those 2 rocking chairs were the very first pieces of furniture we bought for that house. We knew we were going to grow old together in those rocking chairs. A few years after we were married, we got married at 23. So at 27, I felt a lump in my left breast during a self-breast exam. We received news on Valentine's Day, when I was 14 weeks pregnant, that I had breast cancer. The diagnosis, triple negative, grade 3 breast cancer, which actually accounts for about 15% of breast cancers and tends to be more prominent among younger women who carry BRCA mutations, and especially among African American women. Triple negative breast cancer is particularly worrisome because of its aggressive nature and higher mortality rates, as well as fewer individualized treatment options or targeted therapies. My father, unknowingly, had been the carrier for the BRCA gene mutation. I'm just crossed into the 14-week mark in my pregnancy. Most of our family and friends didn't even know we were expecting. I'd only been at my office for 5 months. My boss definitely did not know I was expecting. So many thoughts were swirling through our head. But this became my why. The 14 weeks. Every night that I laid my head down at the end of the day, from that day forward, and every morning that I was lucky enough to rise, I prayed for the strength, the luck, and good fortune to make it to the first day of kindergarten. I didn't ask for kindergarten graduation, intentionally. I didn't want to push my luck. I didn't want to let myself hope too far out. But our unborn child, our baby, he became my beacon of hope and my why. There was a tremendous sense of urgency from my providers to begin treatment immediately. Given the size of my tumor, its aggressive nature, and the location sitting on my chest wall, it was recommended to start with chemotherapy first in the hopes of shrinking the tumor and perhaps eliminating it altogether. But it was also explained to me, my 27-year-old newly pregnant self, that while we're hoping to destroy the tumor, you will also lose a lot of your healthy cells, your hair, but beyond that, your eyelashes, your fingernails, your toenails. And so I'm thinking the obvious, how is my baby going to be okay? I've been told I can't drink a cup of coffee. Are you sure about this? I wasn't showing. I'd never been pregnant before. I didn't know. I was trusting the doctors that this was okay. I couldn't feel him kick or move. My oncologist was incredible. He not only supported this notion that I go and get a second opinion, he helped coordinate second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions with experts from coast to coast. I met with doctors in person and on the phone before that was a thing. And within a week from my diagnosis, I was sitting in the infusion chair. Every doctor I met with supported the proposed treatment plan and adopted the same sense of urgency. The plan was chemo first and then surgery. Blake Michael, he's named after my brother, was born at 34 weeks, healthy and a whopping 5 pounds. He was born on July 14th, 2007. The hope and joy that Blake brings to our family from the moment we learned about him and the little village that surrounds our family has been incredible. I think there were about 12 people in the delivery room, and each one of them were in tears. And 10 of those people were staff members of the hospital. I'd never met most of them. Blake arrived, by all accounts, healthy after nearly 6 months of chemotherapy with me in utero. And he had this gorgeous head of thick black hair. And here I am, bald, with no fingernails, and braces to boot. I somehow, despite all that chemotherapy, managed to make what I think was the perfect, most precious baby boy. And I will give some credit to my husband. My current status is no evidence of disease, or as those of us in the cancer community like to refer to as NED. I say this with my eyes wide open, though, because the fact is that men, women, and children in our own families and communities are still living with cancer and the stage 4 prognosis for many of them. Continued research for additional targeted therapies, more effective targeted therapies, and targeted therapies that can improve quality of life while being successful in our outcomes is where we are focusing our collective work. On behalf of our families and our friends, who are living with stage 4 metastatic cancer, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your focused work and your support to improving the outcomes. Thank you for being our hope. My transition from active care to survivorship care has been at times smooth, but at other instances rather bumpy. As you know, cancer is not an acute disease. And as the years pass, since my diagnosis and active treatment, you would think that cancer would be less prominent in my life. The reality, though, is that in the world, at least, of breast cancer, there is no cure. And that fact is something that is ever present in our family. There is no resolution and there is no end date. Every single major life decision that impacts our family is weighed against the reality of living with cancer. Do we have more children? Do we enter a lease in a new car? Do we take that new job in our dream city? Do we say yes to the promotion? These are all measured against the decision's impact on my health and stress and time management. What about the makeup to my care team that we now have a trusted years-long relationship with? What's the reality of the increased risk to secondary cancers or the fear of recurrence? And the known late-stage side effects that have either already presented or inevitably will present. With that said, our family has been able to find, like many survivors, the joy in the day and the determination to go forward despite the struggles and hardships that come in the survivorship journey. I want to say, though, survivorship is a bit of a facade for us. And that's difficult to balance, right? I'm internally grateful for my medical team. My oncologist is wonderful. He told me in no mixed messages on my last chemotherapy appointment, here's your directive, sweat every day. That doesn't mean walk around the block with your baby in the stroller. Sweat. Limit your alcohol intake, maintain a low-fat diet, and don't gain weight. That was it. And he said it, and it came from a place of love. And he told me exactly what I had control over. And otherwise, I didn't have control over it. And because I was triple negative, there were no additional treatments after chemotherapy. But the whole person needs are much broader than that prescription. And this is why, as a survivor, interventions are needed along this continuum of survivorship in varying doses at different stages of our life. In a quest to get back to normal, whatever that was, as soon as possible, I ran back to court and started taking on trials again. This became a celebration and a marking for my family and I. But it was balanced against the fact and the reality that I am a new mom, a working mom, and a young adult survivor trying to manage my follow-up care. There were a whole new set of struggles. Lingering physical effects, some that began during treatment, like chemo brain, and continue to this day, and others, like progressive bone loss or an osteoporosis diagnosis, which I received at 38, many years after my treatment, but present challenges because it's not what you would expect at that stage of life. As you finish active treatment, the quiet sets in. Your village moves on, and your friends, despite their best efforts, simply don't get it because they're not at this stage. Cancer doesn't stop. The whole world got a chance to experience this, of what it's like to be isolated with a chronic illness, the loneliness, and the living in fear that perhaps the other shoe is going to drop. As an adolescent and young adult, or AYA survivor, sometimes survivorship feels like Groundhog Day, and that your concerns and your questions and your fears are dismissed. Perhaps you're being brushed off because of your age, and for some, it's your race. The institutional barriers within our systems, including our healthcare system, everything from diagnosis and screening to clinical trial access and treatment, is something that we need to face head on. Women of color, men of color, those who are non-English speaking or second language, our generational competency, all areas that we have to grow and improve, not only our outcomes in physical health, but our quality of life. In my survivorship, one of the biggest challenges has been our decision to move from Central California to Southern California. I received a very exciting offer to help lead a criminal division looking at programming and creating programs for alternatives to incarceration. It was incredibly rewarding work and a promotion by all accounts, professionally and personally. We were going from Fresno to San Diego, and I love Fresno, but it was a win across the board. And in some ways, it was just what our family needed, a fresh start. But we really questioned our decision to move. Were we ready? Were we ready to let go of our original care team? They were part of our family. Our son had more than a dozen aunties, from the front office receptionist to all of the nurses in the infusion room. They watched him grow up. We adored our oncologist so much that we seriously considered naming our son after him. My husband and I decided that once we crossed the 5-year mark, we would be more comfortable with the move. Well, here we were, and we decided to jump into it, knowing that the promotion would bring about new stressors, and again, health concerns. But what we didn't anticipate was the stress of establishing a new care team in a new community. You know, the sense of promotion going from a rural community in Central California to an urban environment with multiple teaching hospitals within a 20-mile radius, I thought my care would be exponentially better and I would have more options. What happened from day one and continues to today is that in many ways it's become more challenging to navigate. There are too many options, and some of the best options are unattainable, they're inaccessible to me. The long-term health issues continue to set in. There has been a substantial lack in coordination of care and navigating your new care team with limited opportunities to establish trust and a relationship because the frequency of interaction is so far and few between as a 15-year survivor has been difficult. I feel like in many ways I'm interviewing for a job again, or I'm doing speed dating. But it's this exposure and interaction that really has felt like a void. Sometimes it gets so frustrating that my husband and I second guess whether or not we made the right decision to move. How can that be? How can the fate of our family's well-being be contingent on where we live and the quality of care that we're receiving in one community over the other? How can our family's wellness and sense of ability to move forward be dependent on our zip code? Knowing I carry the BRCA mutation, has set a fire in me to gain control over my health in the ways that I can. I've accepted I can't control everything, but I have been determined to try to put the pieces of my care plan, my survivorship care plan, together. We have made a commitment to flip our mindset and take substantial changes to our lifestyle to feel better, to be able to get a good night's sleep and wake up and feel rested for the first time in 15 years, to be able to step out in the morning and really feel like we're 38 instead of 88. For so long, we've been complacent. I have been complacent in accepting, well, this was the cost of treatment. It's the cost of survivorship, as if I traded something in. And that might be the case, and it was definitely the case for my aunt and my grandma. But I'm interested in exploring, do we have to settle? And if so, can we do better? Can we together partner to push the needle forward on coupling survivorship with quality of life? The ability to live fully and grant ourselves permission to live with hope. Hope for kindergarten graduation. Hope for high school graduation. This idea that there's been advancements in research and science has given me a different path than my aunt and grandma had. But whole person care, comprehensive care, must encompass the mental, emotional, and physical needs of our patients, as well as their financial well-being. The fact that the latest and greatest technologies are available in my community, but yet remain inaccessible, we can do better. I love how we have changed part of our healthcare system in the world of telehealth, and I know we'll get there, but I just have to say, in these struggles of survivorship, I am going to put telehealth right there in the win column, because that has made life and this stage of life that we're in, my family, chauffeuring around from sports and work and home, it's been fantastic. But the piece of coordinating care is something that I think has been really difficult for myself and my peers in my community, in my cancer community. The coordination of care seems to contribute, or the lack of coordination of care seems to contribute to poorer outcomes. The burden feels as though the patients are doing most of the lifting in this arena. And I don't know what the solution is, and I understand the administrative burdens, but this is hard. And the creative, outside of the box, innovative thinking, which led us to telehealth overnight, needs to continue that momentum to help ease that burden. Together, some of the things that we can do to improve the quality of life for survivors. I encourage, for those of you who are in a clinical role, in a patient-facing role, say something. Survivorship needs to become part of our dialogue early on, not on your last chemotherapy treatment. Remove the stigma. My grandparents and my aunts and my father, they were afraid to say the C word. Now we're afraid, my generation, we're afraid to talk about the future. We're afraid to talk about hope. Let's talk about survivorship from day one. Address the fear, the elephant in the room, and give your patients permission to hope. That also means helping prepare them for the mental, emotional, and physical transition from active treatment, where they get to see you regularly, to survivorship. Avoid that abrupt handoff. Embrace the whole person when talking about survivorship. Mind, body, and spirit. Invest in coordination of care. Invite, no, insist that you have survivors at the table, and preferably those who are otherwise historically marginalized. While NCCS has been at the forefront of survivorship for more than 30 years, and I'm grateful for that, thank you for the work that you're all doing, there's so much more work that needs to be done. And the wonderful thing about survivorship is that as we continue to advance in research and science, and we're all living longer, we have new needs. And so this work is never going to be over. We have lots to do in this arena of uncharted waters. My commitment to seeking a greater quality of life, physically, mentally, and emotionally, is driven by a determination that we're worthy of living fully and living wholly, and we're worthy of the good life. The notion that the American dream, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, is alive and well. It's an unwillingness to lower the standard just because of institutional or systemic failures, which, while they've given us a second chance and extended life and gave me kindergarten graduation, it doesn't mean that we have to trade something over. I know that this is a giant lift, and I don't know the solution, but wouldn't it be wonderful if our paradigm shifted to being patient-centered, where we can provide comprehensive, individualized, whole-person care, and simply not doing it and putting it aside because it's too hard. We can do hard things. We do it every day. Statistically speaking, this is a miracle. I am so grateful to be here with you. All the days ahead will continue to be miracles. I appreciate that opportunity and the work that you do. To those who might be newly diagnosed in this room, or in your family or personal or professional circle, give them a reason to hope. Let them find their beacon. I'm a 15-year survivor and the mother to a miracle baby who is now over 6 feet tall. In July, we'll celebrate his 15th birthday. I'm eternally grateful for my care team. Every year on my son's birthday, we send a card to my treating oncologist with an update and a little sentiment of gratitude. He not only saved my life, he saved my son's. The comprehensive whole person care that we continue to provide during active treatment and in survivorship will not only impact generations to come in that family. I still carry the legacy of my grandma and my aunt, and I think my son will do the same of my journey. So the work that you're doing is going to reach generations, but it's going to make our communities that much richer. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing and working with you today. I appreciate it.